Start YouTube, start Twitch, start Twitter.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's one at a time. Go live. Alrighty, welcome everybody. Welcome to this special edition of Lives 270, brought to you by Brownsville Tech Live. And we apologize for the audio problems that we had earlier, but it seems that Microsoft decided to pull a fast one on me and decided to perform a Windows update right in the middle of the start of my stream. So I apologize. But in the house today, we've got a special guest. I am honored to have Miss Deborah Bell. She is currently running for Cameron County GOP chair. Deborah, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Daniel. I'm honored to be here.
Yes, I apologize once again, but I'm going to be complaining to Bill Gates and company here after the show. But
No worries. It happens to the
it
best of us.
happens. It definitely happens. Technology can do certain things to us all the time. So alrighty, everybody. As I mentioned, I've got Miss Deborah Bell. She's running for Cameron County GOP chair. I'd like to give Deborah an opportunity for you to kind of introduce yourself to the viewers out there, who you are, where you've come from, what you've done, and why you're actually running.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Deborah Bell. I am running for Cameron County GOP chair. And, first of all, I just want to say I'm really excited to have this opportunity because when I started in politics about 4 or 5 years ago, 2019, I think it was, um, I was searching and searching for an avenue of which to get involved. And there was no opportunity such as this. People interested in talking about Republican candidates running or anything regarding the Republican Party. So this is just a great opportunity, and I'm glad to see movement here in the Rio Grande Valley. I was born and raised in Brownsville. I'm a wife, a mama. I have two little boys, Braxton 5 and Kyler 1. And I have a unique perspective, I think, growing up here in Brownsville. I grew up on the outskirts of Brownsville. My mama's family has been here for 100 years and they farmed out along the Rio Grande River. My father's been a police officer for the city of Brownsville for 36 years. And I just kind of have the best of some of the best of both worlds. My father was in law enforcement, my mama's family was in farming, and then I went into education. So just some interesting perspectives locally.
Well, that's great. Definitely, it helps when you have people that are actually running for office that are actually local to the area. I mean, how many times have we seen other candidates move from one district to another just because they've been redistricted and they're afraid to lose their election? And it really does help, in my opinion, when you have somebody here locally, especially here in Brownsville and in Cameron County. I mean, there is no doubt that we need more of a local perspective, especially as we are growing, and we definitely are growing by leaps and bounds these days. So, one of the things that I wanted to kind of start off with, especially with the viewers, is try to give us a little bit of a synopsis of what a party county chair actually does, what they're responsible for. Could you give us an idea of what the county chair's role is in this process?
Sure, it's a great question. It's one I'm probably asked every single day because, first of all, people don't even realize that you get to vote for your county chair in the state of Texas. So that's been a learning curve for a lot of folks. But your county chair, whether it be Republican or Democrat, is in charge of administering the primary elections, getting your election judges set up. We also we work with precinct chairs, get the county executive committee set up. We work on, well, we don't work on, we are responsible for setting up county and state convention, getting our delegates to state convention. There's just a variety of things. Primary elections is our big one, which includes accepting candidate applications. In my case, would be for the Republican Party, helping those candidates get the resources they need. And then one of my favorites is just being the voice for the Republican Party locally, working on outreach in the community, helping people. Well, not just helping people, empowering people to reach out to their elected officials to get their concerns to the right places and show them how to do that. Because what I found a lot of times is everybody has opinions, right?
Right.
Politics plays into everything we do in our daily lives. But a lot of times they don't know how to express those opinions through the proper avenues. So I think one of the ways that a county chair can help is giving them those tools, showing them how to do public comments, how to get in touch with your candidates, and maybe even help them with some of the correct questions to ask our candidates to see, are they aligned to our values?
Right. Right. Well, definitely, one of the things I know the last election cycle, there was a hope that we were going to experience a red wave, obviously in Cameron County, and a lot of us were hopeful, right, that we were going
Right.
to experience once and for all a red wave. I mean, I know we've had in the past, Tony Garza and Carlos Cascos as those elected on the GOP side for county judge, but beyond that, I don't recall anybody else at the county level besides them two. But definitely, it is something that I think we definitely need to make an effort is to improve the role of the two-party system here in Cameron County. For far too long, it's been dominated primarily by the Democratic Party. And one of the
Mm-hmm.
things, obviously, as you mentioned, is the type of candidates that we tend to recruit to run. I've seen many instances where there's candidates that claim to be, Republicans and they claim to be conservatives, but they don't necessarily follow the party orthodoxy or the discipline. I mean,
Right.
in other words, you can't run as a conservative, in my opinion, and then embrace certain liberal causes, you know. And we've seen that. We've seen people to claim to to be to claim to be Republicans, but then they're over there voting, for things that we as conservatives would typically not vote for, especially when it comes to traditional family values. So, I mean, I don't know if there's anything that the county chair can do to obviously weed out candidates, and I'm not necessarily calling for that per se, but
Right.
definitely to me it's important that we recruit and that we have candidates that represent the values that the Republican Party and conservatives you know uh, aspire to. you know I mean, is there any way to weed out or to discourage, others to run? I mean,
Well, legally you can't tell people to run or to not run, right? Or I mean to
right,
not run.
right,
And I'm not necessarily sure I want to discourage people from running, but I think
right,
the way this would work is we build our party, our local party, and we constantly make sure that our values are being reflected. I think one of the things we're seeing right now is a lack of leadership,
right,
and the strength of the party is not at its best right now. And so I think you are going to have candidates that come in and try to take advantage of that. But if we have a strong local party and we empower the people, and you know what, it's the responsibility of the people too to police their own candidates, right?
right,
Ask the questions, ask the tough questions. If you truly are a Republican, then their values should align with the Republican Party platform. And they should
correct.
be able to answer those questions adequately
Yeah,
that other fellow Republicans have. But if they're not, they're going to struggle. But
right,
here's the thing, the party isn't strong enough right now at the local level to empower people, to encourage people to really vet their candidates.
right.
So as a result, we have candidates that maybe aren't quite aligned to what we'd like to see.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, I don't. I, I mean, don't get me wrong. I definitely believe in Ronald Reagan's big tent philosophy. No doubt about that. But
Right.
there can be disagreements when it comes to, certain issues. But in my opinion, when it comes to, the embracement of traditional family values, that's something that I don't think is negotiable. We can't have candidates running locally that, say they're conservative, say that they're Republican, and then turn right around and vote for, you know, uh, pastel colored crosswalks you know, books, certain types of books being introduced to local school children. I mean, I just don't I think that's an area where it's just non-negotiable. So hopefully as we move forward, and as we become a stronger party, that we can actually, recruit candidates that, represent the traditional values that the Republican Party and the conservatives have have been for a long time. So, um,
Absolutely. And that's my hope moving forward. Right now we don't really have anybody out there in the community actively recruiting candidates. And so therefore it's kind of like our border policy. It's just an open door. Anybody can walk through and say, "Hey, I'm a Republican. I'm going to be on the ticket." I mean,
right,
chances are there's space for you because right now we don't really have a lot of people running. I think this year we have quite a few as opposed to last year. But you want to
right.
know what's funny is I think there's 19 positions electable in Cameron County. I might be one or two off on that, but nevertheless, the number is somewhere right in that. And we have one elected Republican right now. One.
Wow.
So there's lots of room for improvement. Now, do you know who that one is?
No, I don't.
It's Constable Norman Esquivel.
Well, I was wondering about that because I know
Right.
that the constable has been very active working with you and
Mm-hmm.
others to, especially on the cleanup, especially with the border surge and some of the mess
Right.
that has been going on with people leaving and trashing, certain areas along the border up. And I was wondering about that. I was wondering about Constable Esquivel, but I wasn't quite sure whether he was a Republican or whether he was an independent. I wasn't sure. I definitely didn't think he was a Democrat, that's for sure. But I was wondering about that. Well, that's good to know. That's definitely good
See,
to know.
and there's plenty of room for improvement, right?
Right. Definitely, no doubt about it. Well, one of the
Lots of spaces
things
to
one
fill.
one of the things that I wanted to touch on is, what can we do with regards to voter outreach? As you mentioned, the party is not strong right now locally at the county level,
Mm-hmm.
but what can
Right.
we do to show how compatible, the GOP and conservatives are when it comes to, some of the traditional Hispanic families and some of those values. I mean, there's no doubt that, we as Hispanics believe in the nuclear family just like most folks in this country. But what can we
Right.
do to kind of you know make these folks aware that, that the GOP aligns itself traditionally with Hispanic families.
Sure. So I think outreach is just a big thing overall. If you're not aware that there's another option, then how do you know to look for it in the first place, right?
Right.
So I think as the party, we need to be active in our community and we need to be active on social media. Let's be real, a lot of us these days get our information just by scrolling.
Exactly.
And if there's nothing being put out there that represent our values and our community and the other side does a good job of it, naturally they think they're going to align to the other side. And so
Exactly.
one of my big goals is if elected, I'd like to see our website updated consistently. And so when the first thing you do is, Google Republican candidate or Republican Party of Cameron County, it pops up instantly. I want to see a consistently updated calendar. We have multiple clubs here in Cameron County, and they were not easily accessible or searchable because they're all over the place. There's one in Brownsville, there's one in Harlingen. But if we had a really nice website, people could find all of that in one click. click on our
Right.
calendar and have all the club meetings on there. Social media as well. Start using our social media to let people know of, hey, we have one, two, three, four candidates running for this position, or we have a variety of candidates. We're doing candidate forums. Come join us. And you can promote really, really well on social media.
Right.
It's one thing that almost all of us have in common is some platform. So I'd
Right.
like to see us on Facebook. I'd like to see us Twitter, I guess, is where all the political stuff is. I can't say that a lot of people locally. I don't know how big how big the locals are into Twitter, but I know everybody has Facebook. I don't really think I've met anybody that doesn't have Facebook. And
Right.
then Instagram is another big platform. But
Right.
if we start reaching out on all of those platforms, and then of course the real thing is face to face in our communities.
Right.
We have precinct chairs for a reason.
Right.
Those precinct chairs, we have our county divided up into precincts. It's a large county. Um, and those precinct chairs are in charge of the outreach for that particular area. No one person can do this alone.
Right.
It takes all of us working together. And I think that's one of our biggest issues right now is that we haven't been collectively using our voice for outreach. We haven't been collectively using our voice to let our officials know that we want our values reflected too.
Right. Well, that's something that I've argued quite a bit when it comes to social media. I mean, I live on social media, 24/7. I broadcast to like 3 social media platforms. And definitely, I believe that, we have to go beyond traditional media. I mean, for example, podcasts, we give our candidates 45 an hour, maybe more,
Sure.
exposure. The local news station is only going to give you 30 seconds, and you can't get your message out in 30
And it's always going
seconds.
to be the worst 30 seconds for Republicans. I'm just going to tell you that right now.
Well, one of the things I think is that we also have a younger generation out there that obviously is more in tune to TikTok and some of what I call the click and swipe routine, and these are younger folks that typically, they look at a video for 30 seconds and they move on. And I
Right.
will say that, Vivek has done a fabulous job on TikTok with regards to, putting out videos out there. I know he's gotten a
Yeah.
lot of criticism from a few others with regards to that, but the reality of it is that's what our young folks are using right now. In fact, my own insights data, that I look at, and I look at it every single time I have a podcast, is I'm always measuring, the age categories and whether they're male or female. And what I tend to notice is that traditional social media such as Facebook and
Hmm.
YouTube, those numbers, when you look at the 18 to 25 category, they're low because they're not on those
Right.
platforms. They're on the other platforms. So we're trying to find a way to get the messages that we're trying to put out within 30 seconds or less. It's not a very easy way to do it, but I think we definitely need to leverage those newer technologies in social media, when it comes to this view and swipe generation that I talk about all the time. The young folks are on TikTok, the parents are on Facebook, so
Right. No, and
yeah.
I think, I just spent 2, 3 days in Iowa at a Run Gen Z conference. Now, I don't necessarily quite fit into the Run Gen Z or the Gen Z category. I think I'm more of a millennial,
Yeah.
but nevertheless, that's the founder of Run Gen Z is a Gen Z. And so they work with people 18 to about 35, I think 30. And one of the things we talked about was this very issue is I believe the average voting age for a Republican is 55.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The whole room. And you're talking. And so when they said that in a room of 18 to, I don't know, I think the oldest was maybe 35 there at the actual conference,
Yeah.
um, everybody said, whoa.
Yeah.
Because obviously we're all really involved, right? So we look around and think, oh man, the other 25-year-old, whatever, is voting too, right? But no, it's
Right.
not the case. So one of the things we were discussing, well, how do we outreach? How do we how do we reach this generation? And it has to do somewhat with your messaging and then, using the platforms that are trending at the moment. So
Exactly.
TikTok is one of them. And I'll be the first to admit I don't have TikTok.
Yeah.
I don't. I
Well,
have
we
Instagram, I have Twitter, I have Facebook, but I don't have TikTok. And I have
yeah,
Snapchat, but
yeah.
even that, I mean, I don't really see a whole lot of politics on Snapchat.
Yeah, and that's the thing, I when I look at our internal insights data across the whole media group, because it's just not politics that we cover, as you know, we have a few sports shows out there, and we cover SpaceX quite a bit. But you're right. That demographic is still up there, the 45 to the 55-year-old categories.
Yeah,
And and I was telling somebody the other day, what's wrong with young people today? Don't aren't they interested in politics? Aren't they interested in sports? Out of all things, sports. I mean, how could you not be interested in the playoffs? And
I know.
I mean,
I think one of the main
SpaceX.
things we talked about was messaging.
Yeah, yeah,
The way we message is has got to change a little bit.
yeah. Yeah, definitely we need to find a way to attract the younger voters out there. I mean, definitely, we've been told that the GOP tends to be country clubberish, so to speak. So I don't know anybody that belongs to a country club these days anymore, but I guess that used to be the old term. I don't know.
See, right there, we got a problem with messaging already. See,
Yeah, yeah,
we're
no
gonna
doubt.
have to think of another catchphrase, I guess, for the GOP.
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about some bread and butter issues. One of the
Sure.
things that I know that you've talked about is the immigration surge. And I know that at least since December, it's one of those areas that I've been covering quite a bit with regards
Hmm.
to the surge in immigration. I believe that last month there was a record number of migrants actually crossing the border, I think up to 10,000. I don't know if that was a monthly figure or a weekly figure. I can't remember what the statistics showed, but there definitely is a border problem, and there's been a border problem for quite some time. And I know you've been involved in some of the cleanup efforts. Now, I will say that this issue is something that I'm very familiar with. I will admit that I was a government contractor for a while.
Hmm.
I did deal with the migrant situation, especially the undocumented children coming across
Hmm.
the border. Um, so I will say that I was involved, not necessarily involved in the handling of those folks, but I was
Hmm.
more on a technology side. But there definitely is a problem, and I'm not necessarily sure that anybody locally wants to admit that there's a problem or even talk about it. Uh, I mean, what's going on? I mean, is there a concern out there? Because obviously, it doesn't appear that some of uh, the local politicians even want to talk about it.
No, and this was the issue we ran into in May when some of this stuff really amped up. Um, the first, I think it's really interesting because the first time I saw it was on a Brownsville PD Facebook live stream.
Yeah,
And that night they had their PR officer out there and he was live. It was about, I don't know, 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, I think. And they'd had about 2,000 people cross.
yeah,
And I couldn't find it anywhere but Brownsville PD Live.
yeah,
And I thought, this is serious. I mean,
yeah,
how do you just have 2,000 people come across in one section of the US in just a matter of a couple hours? Like that's insane. So I got to thinking about it and I went out there 2 or 3 days later to see it for myself. And you know what, Daniel? Nobody else was there.
yeah,
I went live on Facebook. Nobody else was there. Where are the news sources? There was one news source there, actually. It was
yeah,
Fox News.
yeah,
And they said, "What are you doing out here?" I'm walking around live on my phone, and I have my little 1-year-old with me. I said, "Well, what are you doing here?" And I said, "I live here. I grew up in the Southmost area. Like I live here. I want to see this for myself."
yeah,
And I asked them, I said, "How long have y'all been here?" And they said, "Oh, we've been here about 4 weeks."
yeah.
They have their spot. They called it the Fox News spot. And they'd been camped out there watching everything. But part of the issue is that nobody's covering it and nobody wants to talk about it.
Yeah.
I went to that, I'm going to refer to that Gen Z conference again in Iowa, and we paired up with a bunch of people that were also from Texas, and but they're from the Dallas area, and a lot of them knew about it but didn't really know the detail. Is it really as bad as they say?
Yeah.
What is it like? I mean, do people just walk across? There's definitely a lack of understanding of what it really is happening here at the border. Once again, messaging, the messaging.
Right.
Our local officials don't want to admit it. They don't want to talk about it. They try to cover it up. And I can assure you that they are trying to cover it up.
Yeah. Well, there's no
And I
doubt.
think it's really interesting though, because a lot of our local, like city commissioners and whatnot, have businesses in downtown Brownsville, and that's what's directly being affected. I went
Right.
and walked through the streets in May, and there are people sleeping on the sidewalks.
Right.
I mean, trash everywhere. They're
Exactly.
panhandling because, they come across with these expectations of they're going to be taken care of, and there's just too many to take care of. It's truly a humanitarian crisis. It's really sad to see because there's no plan for them.
Right. Well,
And
one.
that in and of itself is cruel to bring all these people over
Well,
and
I
have
can
no plan
tell.
for them.
Well, I can tell you firsthand that, there is no understanding out there, not just at a local level, but at a national level.
Mm-hmm.
If the American people understood the millions of dollars that are being spent each and every day to clothe and house um, these individuals coming across. I can tell you from personal experience the amount of just computer hardware that I was putting out there at some of these, what we termed at the time shelters or compounds. We're talking
Wow.
laptops, cell phones for every employee, that was employed by one of these facilities. We're talking about meals and medical care that had to be provided to each of these children. And by the way, I was on the front lines during the COVID pandemic. I mean,
Mm.
there were some instances where even my own employees, we didn't even have the proper PPE to actually go into some of these places because we had Wi-Fi antennas go out and all kinds of things happen, and my employees had to go out there and deal with that. But there's millions of dollars being spent each and every day. Delta Airlines is the biggest benefactor of all these migrants that are being flown out to all sorts of places around the country, and people don't realize that that's all being paid for through their tax dollars. But one of the reasons that I think the local politicians are not wanting to talk about it is because some of them are actually making money out of this multi-million-dollar industry. I can tell you that there are former a former Texas state senator, a former Texas state representative, and a current state representative who have been benefactors, one way or the other, by this multi-billion-dollar industry that's been going on for such a long time. But the American people don't realize the millions of dollars that are being spent.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's insane at this point.
Yeah,
And there's no doubt, I flew Delta this past week, and right in front of me were about 10 immigrant children being flown, all boys.
yeah. And you
So
know
yeah,
what?
I mean, to speak
It's,
to that, yeah,
I mean,
somebody has
it's
to pay for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's no fault of their own. I mean, some of
No,
these,
I'm not
yeah,
blaming. No, no. I
yeah.
mean, they're children. In fact, two of the young boys really struck me as looking absolutely miserable, and my heart went out to them. And I thought, this is not right. Where are these children even going? Do they even know where they're going?
Well,
That's what I
back
wondered.
back when I was working as a contractor, I know that there was efforts made to through the office of uh, what is it? ORR, it's called. It's refugee. I can't remember what the other acronym is, but anyway, there was efforts to find the relatives of some of these kids that were that were coming over. But since the Biden administration came on board, it appears that they're just not being released to relatives. They're being released to sponsors, and sponsors can be anybody. So there's some statistics out there that are saying that there have been 85,000 releases, and the majority of those kids have been pretty much let loose on the streets, and God knows what has happened to them. I mean,
They're the lost children.
there appears to be a huge child trafficking situation going on, you know?
That's scary. And you talked about somebody's making money off this. They're making money off this in the worst way. Did you ever see the movie Sound of Freedom?
I have not seen it, but I hope to soon. But I kind of shied away from it because of the fact that, I personally saw some of these kids coming across
You
firsthand.
need to see it, Daniel. It will not disappoint.
Yeah.
If I could watch it, anybody could watch it.
Well,
I am very sensitive to movies,
yeah.
and I made myself watch this one, and I don't regret it for a moment because I think it empowered me so much more that to realize somebody needs to speak up.
Yeah,
Somebody
well,
needs to speak up, and I'm happy to speak up, and I'm happy to talk to officials because it was really alarming in May when I sat there and listened to the mayor and city commissioners say, well, we're not keeping these immigrants here, they're being shipped off, we're busing them off to their sponsors. Okay, what does that mean?
right.
Like whoever can pay the most gets somebody. It's a really horrible thought.
It is a
Who are
horrible
these
thought.
sponsors? How do you sign up to sponsor a child or sponsor people, or how does that work?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, one of the things that I wanted to kind of demonstrate here a little bit, and we're going to flip over to our virtual theater screen and pop in our virtual iPad. One of the things that was a little bit shocking to me is apparently there's organizations out there globally that are actually providing maps to some of these migrant groups on the best crossing points. Uh, and it's incredible. We're talking organizations such as Doctors Without Borders, the
Mm-hmm.
UN. I've even heard the American Red Cross. Uh, they're literally being given maps. I don't know if I can zoom into one of these or not. I tried the last time, but basically, this is one type of map that has been distributed to some of these groups. Uh, there's also listings of the best routes to get to.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the map distributed by the Red Cross. You know, this
Yeah.
is it's totally incredible. You know,
So I'm going to pull this back to the local party, right? Because I look at this and I think this is too big for any one person to handle on their own. But this is where collective voices come in. This is
right?
where collective voices have the opportunity to really, truly make a difference. One of the state senators in Iowa spoke to us this weekend, and he talked about how one time he had this project. They had a 5 year goal, and this project was at the end of that 5 year goal, and the people really wanted this project done. And he said, "Well, hey, I'm sorry, it's already been voted on. It's at the end of the 5 year, and they were just starting the 5 year track." But after some frustration from the locals, um, somebody went and they got 2,000 signatures
Mm,
to get it moved up. That requires unity, working together, and people identifying a problem and working and holding their elected officials accountable. The 2,000 signatures got that thing moved up to the first year, that project.
yeah.
So
Well,
this is where I think having a strong local party is important. I, as a county chair, I don't get to vote on legislation.
right.
I don't. But I can be active in the community. I can let you know that, you know, as Republicans, these are our issues. This is what our platform says, and these are what our elected officials are not doing or doing at the time. And I I think it's really important that we come together and we make our voices heard.
Right.
And case in point with Judge Trevino, he was not going to give Constable Esquivel the $15,000,
Yeah.
but it created an outrage amongst his constituents. And ultimately, what should have been of no dispute was given to Norman.
Right.
Um,
Well, one
I
of the
have a text right
things.
now that says we're not live. Are we live?
Yeah, we're live.
Okay. Okay.
What probably happened is that the original invitation switched, and so we should be live. Let me just double check real quick. Yeah, we're live.
Okay.
Yeah, we're live. It's just that they probably when we had to reboot, it was the old invitation, so there's actually a new link. We'll actually provide that after the show as well. Well, one of the things that I know that I mentioned about a month ago or so, one of my viewers sent me a link with regards to the Brownsville Airport. As we there's billions of dollars that were spent to build a brand new terminal, and one of the things that this individual sent me was a video. And what it was migrants that were actually being flown out of the Brownsville airport. And by the way, it's just not the Brownsville airport. There's a whole lot of activity going at Valley International in Harlingen, as well as in McAllen, and in some of the other airports around the state.
Right.
But what really caught my attention was the fact that you had these migrants out there that appeared to be homeless for the most part. And they were basically sleeping in front of the airport, stomping on landscaping. And I thought, whoa, wait a second. We spent all these millions of dollars on landscaping and trying to make this facility, which is, by the way, is one of the nicest facilities south of Corpus Christi, and we've got people that are not respecting the facility nor the landscaping, and nobody's doing anything about it. So I put a post out there, and sure enough, I had the airport officials and the city respond back. And I wasn't trying to be mean, but you know it once again was this thing about folks coming over and basically trashing the place up, just like they
Right.
did when, Constable Esquivel and yourself were out there trying to clean up the mess that had happened, with some of the border crossings. I mean, you know, I mean, I wouldn't allow anybody to come into my yard and trash the place up because they felt like it, you know.
Right.
There has to be some pride somewhere,
Right. But
for
there's too many people coming across to properly police everybody. And that's one
right.
of our biggest issues. I think it's interesting because I think we have a brand new airport director, don't we?
I don't know
So,
if one has been hired. We did
okay. Well, I know we were
we
looking for one. I thought we
right.
had hired one, but maybe I'm misinformed on that.
Yeah.
Or premature thinking we had hired. But nevertheless, I've heard that same thing. And part of the reason that they're sleeping outside, I believe, is because the airport shuts down and everybody is kicked out. And so
Right.
that is what I have heard. I've had multiple people come to me and say, "Hey, have you heard about this?" And I said, "Well, no, I haven't. I flew out of I flew out of Harlingen. I haven't been in the Brownsville airport for probably about a year,
Right.
but I have had multiple people reach out and some people that actually work in the area and said this is something you need to drive by and see.
Oh yeah. I
And
mean,
it's mismanagement. Our local elected officials are just they're in over their heads.
yeah.
They don't know how to handle this, but yet they love their platform,
Right.
their Democrat platform that has created all this.
Well,
And
there's another example downtown. We built that nice parking garage. Well, we're not using
oh,
it
don't
for
get me started on that one, Daniel.
we're not using it for parking, I'll tell you that much.
No, we're contracting with the federal government for thousands and thousands of dollars a month for
Exactly.
processing.
Exactly.
And you don't even get to see what your money's being used for. They've got all the um, privacy. I don't know what you call those, but you know what I'm talking
Right.
about. They put them all up and you can't see anything.
Well, one of
You
the
drive
things
by it.
that a lot of people, like I said, a lot of people don't realize the millions of dollars are being spent. I can tell you firsthand that
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that I was responsible for was Wi-Fi connectivity in some of these compounds, and the distribution of hardware. And one of the things that I uh, noticed firsthand, and everybody around town noticed firsthand, is when the COVID pandemic hit, and kids had to basically do remote learning. You had
Mm-hmm.
kids lined up at local high schools with their parents trying to get a Wi-Fi uh, little box so that they could connect via the internet. And at the same time, the federal government is over there funding these compounds and installing Wi-Fi and Chromebooks for kids that are not even from here. So they're taking advantage of technology that our own kids here locally don't have access to and struggled, especially during the pandemic. And I believe that's wrong. I believe that is
Right.
completely wrong when our local kids could not get basic internet connectivity. And yet we had basic internet connectivity and hardware at some of these compounds. That is just absolutely wrong. And people would be just alarmed to even know that, you know.
Right.
So,
But see, that's the thing. It's just a lot of people, a lot of Americans don't really, it comes back to just misinformation. Not, maybe some of them don't want to know
right.
what's really truly going on. And I
Out
think,
of
and
sight,
I
out
keep
of
bringing
mind,
it,
so to speak.
yeah, and I keep bringing it back to locally because all of us live here. We all see it.
Right.
If we all used our voices to speak up and say, hey, this isn't right, look at what's happening. Hundreds and hundreds of us, there's thousands of us, right?
Right.
Let's just say we got a couple hundred people to start speaking up,
Yeah.
to start telling the stories, to start sending, emails, petitions, calling the news stations and saying, I want you to report on this
Yeah.
and report it truthfully. What's really, truly happening here?
Right. Right.
Tell the
Well,
city of Brownsville to stop fudging numbers when it
right.
comes to crossings.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, one of the other
But it,
areas, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
Well, one of the other areas I want to talk about a little bit was Bidenomics and how it has affected people here locally. I can tell you firsthand that even though inflation is down, even though, gasoline is down, it sure doesn't feel like it. I go to the grocery store, every week or every other week, and I seem to come out of there with a $300 or $400 bill, and filling up our gas tank just doesn't appear, to take me much of anywhere these days. And I, how do you think? Do you think once again? Do you think messaging? Do people really know how serious this economy? How bad it is, and I just think we've got a messaging issue there as well.
At some point, I mean, not at some point, at this point, I don't think anybody um, is out of touch with the fact that this is bad. It's touched every aspect of your life, whether it
Right,
be to buy groceries, to eat out, to travel, you name it,
right.
even doctor's visits. I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
every single thing has gone up at some point. Um, and once again, I have a unique perspective on this. Obviously, this is by our policymakers up in Washington, right? But at the
right,
same time, I'm going to take it back to local because that's where the passion is, and that's where I think we can really truly make a difference. This is our biggest sphere of influence, right?
right,
And a lot of these people that are up there making these decisions that are directly affecting our pocketbook right now started at a local level.
right,
So we have big primary coming up with our county candidates and so on and so forth. Everybody gets super stoked to go out and vote for the president, which is great, which is
yeah,
great. I also vote for our president.
right.
But never underestimate the importance of down ballot voting because a
Absolutely.
lot of these people get started here. Joe
Yep.
Biden didn't start as president.
Right,
And
right,
so we need to make sure that we're vetting at the lowest lowest office possible. I mean, whether that be, and I say lowest, I shouldn't even say that because every single office is important. So at the most intimate of positions, whether it be your ISD school board, whether it be your county commissioner, your city commissioner, your alderman, whatever it may be, you need to make personal contact with those candidates and ask them questions. Ask them
right.
these tough questions. Are they happy with the way the economy is right now?
Yeah,
What do they think the solutions are?
yeah. Well,
And make public comments. We're not going to get anywhere until we step out of our comfort zone. Show up at your city commission meetings. And a lot, most of these time nowadays, you can log in virtually and do this.
right. Well, definitely, we've got a congressional race that's pretty important here. Obviously,
Right.
District 34, we have several candidates. I've had one candidate appear last week,
Mm-hmm.
and I've made a few invitations. But a lot of people, need to understand that our congressional district is pretty important, and
Absolutely.
some of the policies that are affected are by our local, congressional representatives. The monies that come in, the funding that comes in. So it's pretty important. I mean, it's not enough to just be happy with somebody that switched, districts for a fear of losing an election. You know, um,
Right.
And so I think a lot of people don't realize that that it matters who you elect, especially if they've come across as being nothing more than a carpetbagger. And excuse the term, but that's exactly what I call candidates that jump ship.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Well, and I think even at the congressional level, I still consider it a local race. I mean,
yeah,
I've seen Vicente Gonzalez at the Rancho Viejo Country Club or whatever. These people are still here in our midst where we can reach out, make contact, and ask questions.
right,
I've seen all of our candidates in places,
right,
normal places, not at candidate forums, like an HEB or a Walmart or
right,
a restaurant. This is your opportunity to ask them the tough questions and to really truly vet them. I mean, the CD 34 race, I think, spans 5 counties,
right,
but they alternate. They're around this area all the time.
right,
It's still probably it's still a very intimate race to where you can reach out and talk to them probably face to face if you really truly wanted to. And
right.
yeah, they do have a lot of responsibility when they go to Washington to vote. So this is your chance.
Yeah,
Look, everybody just got their new I wish I'd have brought mine with me so I could hold it up, but their new voter ID in the mail or their voter
right,
card.
right.
Look at that. Go
Yeah,
through and look at all of the people that represent you.
yeah,
Find out how you can reach out to them. And if you can't do it, reach out to me. I'll get you their email and their phone number.
right,
And see, that's why it's super important to have an active county chair. If
right.
you have a really serious question or a personal story that you really want your candidates to listen to, reach out. And if you can't, let the county chair help you figure out how to do that.
Yeah,
Candidate forums, all of this stuff. So we can ask these tough questions. Bidenomics has affected all of us.
right,
But until the people that represent us know how upset we are, it's not going to
right.
matter.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and let's not get started on property taxes. That's been a hot
Oh,
topic.
geez.
That's been a
Oh,
hot
once
top.
again,
Yeah. Once
the
again,
power of the collective voice.
yeah, definitely. That's another topic altogether. But, one of the things that as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, when it comes to supporting candidates that, support traditional family values, there's no doubt that there is an assault on the traditional family today. Not
Mm-hmm.
only at a national level, I mean, we've seen that, but we've also seen how the culture war has actually come home. It's actually
Oh, yeah.
the
It's
battle
at
is
your door
being
knocking.
it's at your door knocking. And I never thought that I would see the culture war here locally being fought out. It's
Yeah.
basically a battle for the heart and soul of our children today, and it seems to and the family seems to be under assault. And I know that for the most part, city elections are nonpartisan, but there's definitely agendas being pushed. There's no doubt about that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you're right. We have to do a better job at messaging, and we have to do a better job of finding out what some of these folks actually represent, you know,
Exactly. I'm
because
100% with you on that.
yeah,
Your city elections are nonpartisan, but that doesn't mean you can't reach out and ask because moral issues are critical, and how they would vote or how they believe transcends everything they do.
right,
Integrity in and of itself is a major issue we're seeing here locally.
right. And we don't have to Austinize Brownsville. There's
Sure.
there's there seems to be a some kind of push, lately that we have to Austinize Brownsville, and we don't have to Austinize Brownsville.
Oh,
We
you know what? Like 3 years ago, Trey Mendez, our former mayor, had a quote in a city commission meeting, and I wrote it down. And it said, I am working to make Brownsville a progressive city.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
Well,
mean, that agenda is open and in plain sight. Everybody knows it. I mean, what transpired in June with our sidewalks was just despicable.
right. Yeah, with
Taxpayer
no
monies.
well, with no notice whatsoever. You know,
No, and the other thing I tell people, I said, everybody has a special interest. Everybody has
right,
something they're interested in. Did they
right.
paint the sidewalk for breast cancer awareness? What did they do? Did they paint it for, I don't know, what do you like to do? Running, chess, whatever it is. Did they ask you
Yeah,
if you wanted your sidewalk painted for you?
yeah, I
For
mean,
your
I
special interest group? No, they didn't.
hey, I'd like the mural of Brownsville Tech Live's logo somewhere downtown, you know.
Right? Exactly.
Well, yeah, definitely, there seems to be, an assault, and
Hmm.
I think it's important that we are aware of that, you know. And that leads me to another area I wanted to talk about. Obviously, there has been quite a lot of changes here in the county, primarily with SpaceX, and I mean it is no secret that this podcast is a follower of SpaceX. We report we cover SpaceX basically 24/7, 365 days out of the year. I will say for anybody that thinks otherwise, Elon Musk does not pay for this podcast, even though I would not mind a loan, But definitely, that is something I want to clarify for some people that have doubts out there. But Elon is not a contributor to this podcast. But we definitely cover SpaceX quite a bit, and they've had a dramatic impact since 2014. They have an employee count of over 2,000 employees, and they appear to be expanding every day. Um, Obviously, with that, there's definitely people that either view them positively or negatively. And of course, there is no doubt that there is concerns out there when it comes to access to the beach, as well as the some
Hmm.
of the environmental concerns. And let me be very clear: there is no Democrat or a Republican that wants a dirty beach. I think none of us do. I mean, as you
Yeah, that's a
mentioned,
nonpartisan issue.
I
I mean,
mean, you
cleaning up,
yeah, I mean,
going back to the border cleanup, that should have been a nonpartisan issue.
yeah. I mean, no Republican and no Democrat want Dirty Beach. You and I have lived here
Right.
all our lives. We've grown up, fishing and hunting and stuff like that. Nobody wants that, but we also have to be responsible and have a little bit of common sense that, as I've said in the past on many podcasts, we've been launching rockets from the Florida coast for over 50 years, and not a single alligator has ever been lost. And so, in my opinion, some of the concerns that have been brought up by some of these radical groups, primarily funded by the Sierra Club, have been completely, null and void. But what is your viewpoint on SpaceX? Positively, negatively? Um, what's your viewpoint on that?
Mm. Well, I may have a little bit different of a viewpoint than most folks. I grew up out there. That
Okay,
is where my mama's family farmed. And so I have seen it change dramatically since, what did you say, it was 2014 when
2014.
Elon came down here officially.
Yeah,
So like with any change, there's some reservation there.
right.
I understand the need for progress, but I'm going to be completely honest here. Space exploration has never been anything I was interested in. It just, I mean, I don't even know if Elon walked up to me today and said, "Hey, you want to go up to space?" I would be like, "No, I don't." I mean, it's cool that you're here, but no, I don't. I have no
Yeah,
desire whatsoever. So to me, it's already hard for me to kind of grasp that concept. I
right.
understand, like I said, progress is necessary. I'm all for progress, trust me. But as having grown up out there and seen how much it's changed, and it's really starting to chip away at the rural aspect of Brownsville. I
Right.
mean, Elon is developing his own city
That's right.
in the
And
rural aspects of Brownsville, or what used to be the rural aspect of Brownsville, but it's quickly becoming um, uh, modernized.
yeah, I mean, no doubt that, I even heard last month, I think I saw a few pictures out there. There's actually now homes being built for executives, and
Yes, there are.
there's been some postings recently with regards to schools being either provided or built down there. I don't know if it's necessarily
Well,
for
the school
employees.
has been there for a while.
Yeah,
It's internally, it's very small. The employees choose I guess, have the option to allow their kids to be schooled in one of the facilities out there. I think
Right.
that's been an option for a while, though.
Yeah, I think they have to pay though, or something like that. I don't
Yeah,
think
no,
it's
I think
free.
that yeah, I believe they do. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
But I don't know the ins and outs of it. I just know somebody that used to teach out there, I believe,
Yeah.
and it was a couple years ago.
Yeah. Well, definitely you're right. I mean, there definitely is a change with regards to, the rural areas. I'm very familiar with some of the areas that you grew up in, down on the east side of town. Actually, my grandparents and my family actually lived out there, many many years ago. Uh, so I definitely know what you're talking about. That there's definitely changes. I mean, there's even talk I heard recently of a hotel being built down there somewhere.
I have heard that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Let me give you an example. So there is an area out there off of Boca Chica that I'm assuming the city has paved it, and it's now this giant parking lot where it's like a park and ride
Hmm.
for SpaceX employees. And I believe Elon contracts with the county and essentially leases it,
Mm.
if I understood correctly. Well, back in the day, that used to be my great aunt and uncle's place.
Wow.
And the home was built with boards that came from Oklahoma on a train.
Oh wow.
So, yeah. So to see that paved over, obviously, like you said, progress has to happen. I get it.
Right.
But couldn't they have made it something prettier than a parking lot?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's hard to see. It's hard to think that it has developed so quickly and changed so drastically.
Right. I mean, I know that for a long time, well, not for a long time, but at least a couple of years, there was a certain faction around town that believed that Elon was just gonna get up and go one day, and I kept on arguing with them, telling them, you guys are not seeing the forest beyond the trees. There's no way that Elon's just gonna pack up and leave. Just from a manufacturing standpoint, the cost of labor to produce
Yeah.
rockets here in this area, even though they are high paying jobs, is much
Mm-hmm.
cheaper than building them in Florida or anywhere else in the Northeast for that. I mean, we've seen the maquila industry prove that
Right.
time and time again. That the reason there's maquilas in this area is because the cost of labor is cheaper. Not necessarily dirt poor cheaper, but it's cheaper than having to deal with the unions up north. You know,
Mm-hmm.
but the
Yeah.
scary part about that is that argument's even gone away because sadly it's cheaper to manufacture in China than it is to manufacture in Mexico today. So
I've heard that too.
yeah, I mean for the one or two people you can pull into the factories in Mexico, you can pull in 15 from the farms in China, you know, and pay them 10 cents a day. Literally 10
Sad,
cents a
isn't
day.
it?
It is. It is.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I like I said, I wanted to kind of get a little bit of a feel for SpaceX. Obviously, they are a major employer in the area, no doubt about that.
But let me ask you this, first of all, I want to correct, it was my great great aunt. But the second thing I want to ask though is you said 2,000 jobs, I think. How many of them are actually local? Because I've driven out there and a lot of trucks are out of town. A lot of vehicles are out of town.
Well, the number that I was given about a year ago was that about 80% of the workforce is local, and there's about
Okay.
20%. Yeah, that there's about 20% that are not, and those are typically
Mm-hmm.
engineering types. But for the most part, that was the number that I was given. I do have a couple of friends down there that work directly with them, so
Mm-hmm.
I haven't revisited what those numbers are, but I mean it definitely they are definitely a major employer, and it I don't know what the future holds with regards to the aerospace industry down here, but
Well,
obviously
I think he's here to stay.
I think he's here
So,
to stay, and I think that one of the things from a positive standpoint is it kind of speaks to the possibilities of what our local workforce can do. I mean, not only can we
mm-hmm.
build widgets, but we can actually build interplanetary spacecraft that one day will, travel to the moon and Mars. And that says a lot. I mean, that says a lot about what we can build. And hopefully that is a springboard to future, economic growth and opportunity for folks here locally,
Right.
you know.
And I think that's something that everybody can agree on.
Yeah.
We want local economy to thrive and
Yeah.
businesses and jobs. And
Yeah.
I don't think that's a question. It's just the avenue of by which we get there may be
Yeah.
a little different depending upon your
Absolutely.
affiliation.
Right. Absolutely. And like I said, I don't believe for 1 minute that, you know, that any Democrat or Republican wants a dirty beach. None of us do, right? I mean,
Right.
none
We
of
just
us
want to
do.
make sure I think that Elon is abiding by the rules.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like we expect, and
Mm-hmm.
so, but we can't come up with frivolous lawsuits and, ancestral claims by Indian tribes that are not even registered with the federal
Ah,
government.
oh, that's a new one. I hadn't
Uh,
heard that one.
oh yeah, yeah. One or two of the lawsuits, that has come up, to stop SpaceX is by a local Indian tribe that claims to have ancestral that the area down there is ancestral to them. The reality of it is that they, historically speaking, they were living across the border in Reynosa back in the 1800s. So I don't know, that's about 50 to 75 miles away. So I don't know how they can claim ancestral lands, Um, but, once again, like I said, nobody wants a dirty beach. Nobody wants,
Right.
for beach access, to be closed. I mean, but there's got to be some level of compromise there, in my opinion, so. All right,
Hmm.
let's see here. So one of the things I wanted to kind of talk about a little bit, and this is usually a question that I throw out there. I think I told you that I may ask this question. Is I want to talk a little bit about faith. I want to talk about a little bit about faith, and some candidates are very comfortable talking about their faith. Others are not, and that's fine. But I wanted to find out how faith has played a role and continues to play a role in your daily life and your pursuit, and obviously your pursuit of elective office.
Sure. I wouldn't be running for this position if my faith wasn't at the forefront. Um, I mentioned it was about 4 or 5 years ago, 2019 when I got involved, 2020 when I really got involved. And it was because I felt like my values, my Christian values, were being threatened here in the city of which I grew up in. And it became extremely real and raw to me when I became a mother and realized I'm raising my son in an environment that is not conducive to what I imagined. I mean, to what I was raised in locally.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's what really launched me into getting involved locally. I didn't like it, and I don't sit on the sidelines. So if I don't like something, I'm going to get involved and I'm going to speak up. And there was a lot of things happening at the time. It was summer in June, and the whole debacle of drag queen reading at the public library really disturbed me. Taxpayer money was being used for that. You know, that's the kind of stuff that originated in the bars. Keep it in the bars.
Right.
That was my belief. Keep it where consenting adults go in there, but not children.
Right.
So
Right.
that's kind of what launched me in the middle of all this. I created a petition, sent it to the mayor. The library went viral, received a lot of hate, which was really refreshing, actually, empowered me even more because for every bad comment I received, about 5 to 10 positive ones saying, "We're praying for you and we believe the same."
Right.
So my faith definitely led me through all of that and was the very reason of which I chose to speak up.
Right.
And
Well,
you know,
Def.
that's one thing we haven't really touched on, Daniel, is I think we're missing a really big voter base here locally is the church.
Right.
Because when I spoke up, it was the churches that reached out,
Right. Right.
but they've since subsided again. Where are they? We need them to be consistently speaking up and stepping into the public square. You know the history of this country just as much as I do. That this country was founded on faith
Right.
and values.
Right.
And I want to be very clear that I love everybody.
Right.
And it's not a hate thing. It's just about sticking with our traditional values and not trying to mess with our children.
Right. And
You know, we're
that's
talking about kids. It's my kids.
right.
Consenting adults is a different thing. But when you start bringing in kids, and I'm talking little kids,
Oh yeah.
it's wrong.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you that, that's where the importance of the candidates that are running for your school board come into play. I
100%.
I can tell you firsthand, my mom used to work in education for a while, and I would hear some of the stories that she'd bring back of, when they were attending these conferences and workshops and seminars. And back then, some of the topics that they were talking about was like, you know, having, education for 5 year olds. I'm sorry, but when I was 5 years old, I wasn't thinking of those things. I don't think most of us were. So
No,
so what's changed? I mean, what's changed? But I think what it boils down to, there seems to be indoctrination in play.
sure. It's the
And
breakdown of the family. It's the breakdown of, um, it's the lack of involvement of the church. I mean, there's just so much to attribute this all to.
yeah,
But what we really need is for parents to step up and be parents, to get involved and to ask your kids daily, what did you do in school today? But take it a step further. What did you learn? What did your teacher say?
right,
Let me see your homework. Let me see your textbooks. Go
right.
to the meetings. You know, as a former public school teacher, I can assure you that parent involvement is at an all-time low. It's probably even worse now than it was
Oh yeah,
5 years ago when I was teaching.
yeah.
Um, and when it came time to report card pickup, you know, I had 100, I can't even remember, like 118 kids in eighth grade. And I'd get maybe 15 parents that would show up to pick up their kids' report card.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean,
And
very.
it's devastating. And so you think about that, right? And you know that parent involvement is at an all-time low. And you know that they're not going to be patrolling what their kids are watching,
No,
what they're listening to. I mean, my goodness,
yeah,
just in class alone,
yeah,
some of the things I would catch these kids looking at, listening to, reading
right,
was was just purely trash.
right, right,
But to the parent that won't even show up and pick up the report card, you think they're really going to be asking what the school's teaching?
right,
We need the parents to get involved and take back the education system.
right.
We've let the government take it over. And my goodness,
Yeah,
when you look at what the government's taken over,
yeah,
can't say I'm exactly hopeful.
yeah. Well, definitely that's why it's important to look at your local school districts as well, you know. And I know those are
Yeah.
nonpartisan. I know that those are nonpartisan per se, but there's
Yeah, but
still
ask those
folks.
tough questions. I don't care. I don't
Yeah,
care if it's nonpartisan and they say, oh, that has nothing to do with me. Yeah, it does. Because at the end of the day, you're the one that makes the contracts for the educational material. And
yeah,
you're the one that has access to the representatives and stuff. I mean, we all have access to the representatives, you know, your state board of education, but um, they are the safeguard to the school essentially.
right,
And
right.
when the parents step in there, they have to listen to the parents. And the
Yeah,
parents get involved and say, I don't want my kids reading that. My kid's
yeah,
not going to read that.
right.
They
Well,
have to listen.
as I've said many times, if we don't look out for our kids, no one will. That's just.
Oh, the government will, and they'll take your kids. They will take them and teach them exactly what they want to teach them. So
Right.
yeah, it's time that parents wake up.
Yeah.
And it doesn't just start when they start school. It starts now when they're
Yeah.
one, when they're newborns,
Yeah.
two, three. Get yourself in that mindset that I am the one solely responsible for my child and I'm going to look out for my child.
Yeah.
And I'm going to speak up wherever it may be.
Right. Well, one thing I forgot to ask you is, do you have a primary opponent for the primary election or no?
I believe I do. Yes.
Okay. I just was wondering
Hmm.
because I haven't seen anything from anybody else, and so I was kind of wondering about that. I said, I wonder if she's
Well, then there you
unopposed.
go. That speaks volumes right there.
Okay. Well, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure, so I just wanted to ask that. And by the way, when do early elections start, and when is the general election?
February 20th begins early voting. Election day is March 5th.
All righty. Okay. And
Yeah.
so on the other side, on the Democratic side, there's also somebody running for their chair as well, correct?
You know what? I haven't even looked. Because I obviously am not going to pull the Democrat ticket,
Right,
right? But
right.
I think I saw something about Jared Hakama is a
Oh,
Democrat chair.
oh,
I
is he
think.
still at the chair? Huh.
I think. I
Wow.
think. I'm not even. Yeah, I believe it's Jared, but I
Okay.
don't know if their election is up or not. I haven't
Or
seen
not.
too much on
Okay.
that.
All right.
So, but here's the thing I want to be very clear to anybody watching. In order to vote for your Republican candidates, you have to ask for a Republican ballot. Don't go in there and say, hey, I want to vote for Deborah. They're going to know who Deborah is. You're going to have to say, I want a Republican ballot.
Okay.
And then, yeah, it's something on all of my literature because people think that you just get to walk in and vote. No, you got to state whether you're pulling a Democrat ballot this time for primaries only,
Okay.
Democrat ballot or a Republican ballot.
Okay. All right. Well,
So
that's
to
that's
vote for
good to
me,
know.
Republican ballot.
That's good to know because I've heard a few horror stories of people, ended up being issuing one ballot and they didn't want to do that. And I even heard somebody not being able to return it. Not that they marked anything on it, but
Yeah,
yeah.
no, be very clear when you walk in. They should get you at the door and they should say Republican or Democrat, and you tell them Republican.
All righty. Well, we've definitely gone for almost an hour, despite some of the audio problems that we had earlier, which I apologize for. But it was definitely a great opportunity to get to know you and the viewers to get to know you as well. I will remind everybody that we are broadcasting across 9 social media platforms in total. That includes Facebook Live, YouTube, Twitch, and X, formerly known as Twitter. And then for those of you that don't catch the live edition, we actually upload the broadcast over to Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Instagram as well. So if you didn't catch us tonight, you can definitely catch us tomorrow morning on those other platforms as well. Once again, it was my great honor and pleasure to have Miss Deborah Bell. She is running for the primary for the Cameron County GOP chair. Any final closing thoughts, Deborah?
No, I just want to thank you so much for taking an interest in local politics and inviting me on the show. And I hope to everybody takes a moment, marks on their calendar February 20th for early voting, and then March 5th for election day. It is your civic duty, and I hope you exercise it.
Yep, there's no doubt that every one of us has a responsibility to go out and vote. And we definitely wish you the best of luck here in March. And you're invited back at any time, whether you're running or otherwise.
Thank you, Daniel. I'll take you up on that offer. Local
That's
politics is a passion, and I love chatting about it.
And by the way, if you meet some of your CD34 candidates out there that have got my invitation, nudge them a little for me because I'm still waiting for some responses.
I will most certainly do that.
All righty, Debbie. Well, I definitely enjoyed having you on tonight, and we will talk to you soon. Everybody, once again, this was a special edition of Live 270. We did have a special podcast scheduled for tomorrow, which dealt with the border crisis, but we're actually moving that to next week, pending guest availability. So be out on the lookout for that. And as you all know, we are covering the NFL playoffs as well on the Spin Zone. We're transitioning from the Cowboy Spin Zone over to a larger array covering the entire playoff teams that are out there right now vying for a NFC and an AFC divisional spot. So stay
Guess
tuned.
it's a good thing I didn't
Yep.
bring my Cowboys memes, huh?
Ah. So stay tuned for those episodes coming over the weekend, and we will see you soon. Everybody, thanks for watching. Debbie, thank you for being on the show, and
Thank you for
we'll
having
talk to you
me.
soon. Bye bye.
Bye bye.